What's up? What's up? My pleasure to be here.
I mean, I've been your student for a while, but I wanted to go on to some of the things that you have been, like some of your passions that lie. Even though that you're a professor, you're still hip hop. You're still urban. Um, Tell me how you got started with just making a book about the Northwest hip hop, Seattle's hip hop.
Well, as a 52-year-old now, me and my peers grew up in the 70s and 80s, right alongside as hip hop was being introduced to the country and the world. And as again, for me, as it was for so many other people, it just became a part of our existence growing up. I just happened to fall into teaching, and so it became part of. I taught at Zion Prep in the 1990s, and so I would incorporate little stuff like I had a multiplications table cassette tape that was done in rap form that the students would recite. So little things like that. And then as I kind of crossed over into higher ed, it just made natural sense to incorporate certain aspects of hip hop into classes like intercultural communications. And then the class itself was born in 2003, and the scholarship just kind of came as a result of reading and writing and researching, and so that eventually became the book 6 in the Morning in 2013, I think that was, and I was talking about West Coast hip hop, really California, between 87 and 92. Kind of the beginning point there was Ice-T, 6 in the Morning, and the end point was The Chronic by Dr. Dre and everything that happened.
That's a crazy era. Which
in the midst, right in the midst of what hip hop scholars, if we can call ourselves that, classifies the golden age of rap, basically from like the mid 80s to the mid 90s.
Yes.
And then that I had been asked by Charles Mudede, an editor at The Stranger, in like 2006. So this was when I was still doing 6 in the Morning, to do a brief article about the origins of Seattle hip hop. So in writing that, I was like, okay, well, I can see that there's going to have to be something after 6 in the Morning. So after that was published, got started writing that, and was fortunate enough to have the cooperation of so many incredible artists, writers, DJs, graph writers, breakers, the whole thing.
Yeah,
I was never turned down for an interview by anybody, and so
that's dope.
So the I would not have been able to do that Emerald Street project without the cooperation, really, of the whole community. So that's more or less how that came about.
Man, that's dope. I've followed you because you always have the information that I want to hear. It's always in the hip hop forum that I can kind of relate to. But then when you start getting all the information and giving us history of, our hip hop, because, it is hip hop, it's nationwide, but our hip hop is different than everybody else's. And so
was really dismissed too for a long time.
Yeah.
By outside people,
I think it's still dismissed at times.
To an extent, yeah.
To an extent. It is. But, and I kept following it, I feel like, damn, like he's writing these books and things of that nature. What, in the midst of you doing that, I was starting my photography, videography journey. And, for a long time, I wanted to see if I can document Seattle's basketball. I think because...
And you have been.
I've tried. Definitely tried.
You have been.
But I just wanted to make a documentary about our Seattle basketball, just because I think our basketball is like top of the line. I don't think too many cities has it like we have it. And it took a lot for it to get to where it is right now, right? And I just wanted to know all of it. I just want to know what's in the water, really. It's
got to be something.
It got to be something in the water for us to breed basketball players the way we do. And that was always in the back of my mind, like 8-9 years ago when I first started this journey. And about 6 months, about the beginning of this year, you had came to me with an idea, and I was a little taken back because my professor is asking me to, work with him. It's a little, I'm a little nervous about that, but he came to me about a basketball documentary, and he not just wanted to, write a book, but he wanted to do a documentary, which was special to me. That he found it in his heart that I was qualified enough to help him with it.
Well, I mean, you're kind of the authority. I mean, on this topic, as we're discussing it now, there's not too many people who are really going to be able to. If somebody not from here was asking what it was like here, there's not too many other people that would be able to give a fuller picture than you.
Yeah,
as far as prep sports,
it ain't too many people I ain't seen that dribble the basketball around. If you is good and you talk about how filthy you was and all of that, and I ain't seen you up on the rock. That's for sure. That's a plain fact. But when you came to me, we started talking about it, and it's been in the works. But I think it's time now for people to know we need a call to action for this. First of all, before we need this call to action, are we gonna tell them what the concept, what the documentary's called before we give this call to action?
I don't know where I had a glass, I had a bottle somewhere. Maybe there's some water there. I see a water jug.
Yeah, hey
over
Jeffrey,
there.
can you hand me that water bottle right quick?
Thank you. So it's something here. I mean, it might be in this water. It's probably in all the water around here, but it's something.
Yeah, it's definitely something in the water. It's a documentary about the Seattle area's basketball culture. And I think I need everybody that was involved in this culture, in that basketball culture, from the 60s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. We need everybody that contributed, that wants to contribute to this basketball documentary, because we want it to be special. And I want everybody, the legends, not the legends, the people that think they legends, but everybody else don't think they legends. We want everybody that was a part of that culture, because it's Carmen Johnson told me one story about Franklin against Garfield and the riot they had. I need to know that on feed. I need to get that. I need to get somebody to answer me some questions about that. Okay, it's just a lot of things that transpired in our basketball culture that I think we need to all everybody can contribute to their stories, and we could really make a great documentary. I think Seattle basketball, even though we just got our #1 draft pick, Mr. All of the Above, that he answers all questions, okay, and he's answering them in the NBA right now.
Well, that's why I think it's such a good time, because Paolo kind of functions as a bookend. To this history, especially because it's a big deal to have somebody local go #1 overall. It's definitely a big deal.
Definitely a big deal.
You know what I mean? And so so I came to you during the whole Emerald Street process. So it just real quick, academic publishing, you have to, it's not like a normal publisher where you just have your book and then, oh, it's published. No, you got to send it out to experts in the field, and then they got to review the manuscript, and then they send it back, and that can take months. You know what I'm saying? So I was still in research and write mode. So I was like, okay, well, let me start looking into this history of local high school basketball. Like you said, I had a son, Dana, who played at O'Day in the early 2010s. And it was, as I started getting into it, it was, the what we look at as, the size of Seattle. There's a disproportionate amount, particularly since the turn of the century. There's a disproportionate amount of talent that comes out here, but also specifically professional and specifically NBA talent. Now, certainly they're not the whole story, but they are kind of the attention grabbers, the headlines that help bring and shine light on all of the roots, the basketball roots of the tree as they exist. And so the opportunity to tell that story in a way where we have someone like yourself who is so connected and plugged into the community. That story is just waiting to be told, because there was just a recent article about Rotary on ESPN.com. I want to say maybe in the last couple of weeks or so.
Last couple
and
weeks
so
or months.
it's been a while of kind of sustained attention and kind of national recognition that, you know, we are kind of this basketball mecca, all isolated way up in the corner of the country. And so kind of telling the story of how that happened is really the motivation for me to try to bring this story to light. And just talking about history, in doing that research, I'm finding references to high school basketball games in the Seattle Times going back as far as 1896.
Do you hear that now? 1896? 1896, we had basketball games in the town. You hear me? Okay, I didn't even know that. But I did know that because he's
girls' basketball game is mentioned in 1902.
That's
so it's an extensive history. So we've kind of divided it up from like 1896 to like 1979, which is like the older eras. Once you started getting into the 70s, you started having local stars, but they would go to Seattle U, like Carl Irvin, Jawan Odom, Clint Richardson.
Yes.
They would go to Seattle U. James Edwards went to the University of Washington. But then when you get to the 80s, it's interesting because JoJo Buchanan from O'Day in the early 80s was termed in one of the articles I read as the first ESPN influenced recruit to come from here, because by the time you started getting to the early 80s, you had ESPN, Big Monday, you know, national college basketball games were being broadcast into everybody's living room. So the recruits here were like, wow, seeing people on TV, I'd like to go play there.
Yes.
And then you end up having someone like Quinn Snyder being the first McDonald's All-American boys from here. Although Kim Stewart from Ballard in the 1970s actually played in the Capital Classic, which then became the McDonald's All-American game. So while Quinn Snyder was technically the first McDonald's All-American, Kim Stewart was the one who played in the game that became the McDonald's All-American game. So then you get into the 80s and people start leaving town. And then by the time you get to the 2000s, it's just, you know what I'm saying? It's just talent is just falling all over the place.
It's oozing over everywhere.
I mean, just
overflowing, actually.
Just all over the place, boys and girls. And so I think that telling this story not only tells the story of basketball, but it also tells some of the history. I was talking about James Edwards going to Roosevelt. James Edwards living in the CD, a CD kid is bused per SPS policy from the CD up to a place like Roosevelt.
That's when they was busing us everywhere, huh?
And it resulted in a state championship for Roosevelt, led by James Edwards.
Yes.
You have like the passage of Title IX in 1972, the first girls' state tournament, 1974, and the first girls' team from Seattle to win a state championship was Garfield in 1980, led by Joyce Walker.
Ooh, and see, and now we talk about Joyce Walker. That's one of the best players, not just female
Period.
Players. Best players.
Period. And
ain't no debate about that either.
Right. And so the story of high school basketball is in this area is really the story of the history of Seattle.
I think it really is, because I think basketball played a big part in our camaraderie. I think, you know, it's something in our water. We have a lot of rain, so we always are in the gymnasium somewhere trying to have some rec.
You know, and I just want to add one more thing. I was saying to you earlier about how one of the hallmarks of the Seattle hip hop scene is not only people who make it, but people who turn around and start giving back immediately. And that was very true in the local hip hop scene. And that has also been very true in the local basketball scene.
Yes, it has.
And you think about the people who have been active and the people who continue to be active. And, you know, I know that a lot of people in a lot of places, when they may get put on camps and everything like that, but I think it goes beyond that. And the sense of community fostered by people like your Jamal Crawfords. And like I said, your legends who come back and coach, like Joyce Walker at Garfield, like Brandon Roy at Garfield, and so many others really help set the stage for young people to be able to look up to these people that they idolize and be like, that's someone who I can see, that's someone who I can touch. If they can do it, so can I.
Yeah, that's one thing I know about my town, you know, my city. The ballers get treated just like the city folks do. You know, you part of our community. I don't see it. You know, they can still walk around in the Seattle, kind of, you know, like all of us from our community. You know, we appreciate and admire them a lot, but we just want to make sure they know they still from the town, baby. You know what I mean? And I appreciate them for always keeping it 100 and like being a part of our community, not just being in the community, but being a part of it. You know what I mean? It's something in our water, man. We breed basketball players, man. We breed ballers. I promise you that. Okay, and it's some more coming too. It's some more coming.
And so we're working with For Culture. We've gotten a very generous grant from For Culture to put towards this, and so we will be out in the community soon, requesting interviews, sitting down with people, inviting people to send in pictures, artifacts if you have them. We're going to try to make this a really comprehensive history and story that we're telling about the entirety of what Seattle high school basketball really means.
Yes, and if anybody that wants to, you know, be a part of Something in the Water documentary, I want you guys to make sure you contact me at proof@whereweconverge.com. If you guys want any interviews, we are setting up interviews right now. We want as many interviews as possible. Let me tell y'all this right now. Don't think that your voice is not heard. Now, we're trying to give a call to action now. If you think you are part of Seattle basketball and you were a big part of Seattle basketball or even a small part of Seattle basketball, please contact us so we can get an interview from you, because we need as many interviews as possible, and then we can narrow it down and try to really make a documentary out of it. But all your artifacts, everything, make sure you guys are aware that we want you guys to be a part of this documentary just as much as we want to put this documentary on. Dr. Abe,
we can never have too much information. So yes, this is an invitation for community-wide participation.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, Dr. Abe does his research. Okay, I'm just making sure you guys know that. So we're gonna have some research on the bill. So Dr. Abe, man, I really, really appreciate you coming by to the Truth with Proof show. You've seen me grow up from a young man to an adult, man. I appreciate all the wise wisdom that you have always given me in the hip hop form.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been a pleasure to watch your growth, and it is an honor to be able to team up with you on this project.
Oh, baby. Yeah, Something in the Water coming real soon. Now we need y'all participation.